The taxi came to a screeching halt just short of the gravel driveway I hadn't seen in over a year. Dust clung to my boots, Afghan dust, the kind that settles into the seams of everything you own and never really leaves. My uniform was sharp, pressed just hours before, still holding the scent of the airbase from which I'd flown. I had planned to surprise my mom, crash into the comfort of my own bed for the first time in 11 months, and inhale the scent of the jasmine bush she always insisted on pruning herself. But something was wrong. Where our little white cottage with the forest green shutters and creaky porch swing once stood, there was now a dog park. A fenced-in chaos of tail wags and barking. Two overzealous Labradors were sprinting across what used to be our living room. A woman in spandex glared at me like I was a trespasser as she tugged her spaniel away from my duffel bag. I might have thought I had the wrong address if it hadn't been for the towering oak still rooted in the corner of the lot, the one I had carved my initials into the night before I deployed. Its bark was older, more cracked, but it stood like a sentinel over what was supposed to be my yard. Except it wasn't a yard anymore. A wooden sign read Silverwood Grove Community Park, sponsored by the Silverwood HOA. Below it, a shiny bronze plaque bragged about unity, green space, and shared joy. My heart pounded in my chest, louder than gunfire. I approached a jogger stretching by the path and asked what happened to the house that used to be here. "Oh, some deadbeat didn't pay his taxes or something," he said, barely pausing to catch his breath. HOA reclaimed it. Clean slate, I guess. He jogged off, unaware that I was the so-called deadbeat. Something inside me didn't just break, it buckled, like a structure left too long in the sun. Not grief, not rage. Something deeper. A hollow disbelief that hit like a cold wind. I'd survived sniper ambushes, led midnight patrols, pulled wounded civilians from burning homes. But here I've been blindsided by people in yoga pants and clipboard power trips. I spent the next several hours zigzagging between city offices, dragging my boots and service file from one indifferent desk to the next. Most clerks didn't even glance at me before passing me off. Property records claim my land had been seized 6 months ago due to tax delinquency. But that was impossible. Before deploying, I'd filed the proper federal forms for active duty tax exemption. I even had digital proof. One clerk, chewing gum and scrolling her phone, told me to contact the Silverwood HOA, specifically their president, Victoria Ellis. She apparently took the job very seriously. I found her at the community center, an architectural monstrosity erected where my neighbor's garage used to be. Inside, Victoria sat beneath a portrait of herself labeled Visionary Steward of the Grove. She was in the middle of chastising a 10-year-old for using sidewalk chalk when I clear my throat. "Hi, I'm Nathan Kode. I own 214 Pine Maple Drive." Her eyes slid up from her clipboard, cool and unbothered. A slow, deliberate smile stretched across her lips. "Oh, that lot was declared abandoned after repeated tax delinquency. Per protocol, the HOA repurposed it." I explained I'd been deployed with the Army and had filed my exemption. She didn't blink. "Maybe you should have considered your civilian responsibilities before running off to play GI. Joe." The room went still. Her voice, syrupy and condescending, oozed into the silence. "I'm protected under federal law," I said, holding out the papers. "The Service Members Civil Relief Act protects against this exact kind of seizure." Victoria glanced at my paperwork and offered a tight smile. "We could maybe offer you a lot next to the dumpsters. Call it even." I left without a word, but her smug little smirk burned itself into the back of my skull. That night, I checked into a run-down motel outside city limits. The mattress was thin, the walls stained with old cigarette smoke. But worse than the physical discomfort was the rage, not hot, but razor cold. This wasn't some war zone in a desert. This was my home, my soil. And the people who had stolen it were the same ones I'd risked my life to protect. By morning, I called in a favor. Jesse Tran had been a signals specialist in my unit. He now worked in cyber operations at a federal agency. I'd pulled him from a burning convoy once. He hadn't forgotten. Within hours, Jesse sent me a report so damning it made my stomach lurch. The HOA hadn't just seized my home feed falsified records. Jesse uncovered forged signatures, altered HOA minutes, and a trail of shady land transfers tied to Victoria's cousin, who just happened to run a local development company. They'd fabricated a story of abandonment, backdated documents, and pocketed grant money meant for veterans. But the worst part? Jesse found emails from Victoria. One line made my blood run cold. Glad we flipped that grunt's dump. Last thing this place needs is some PTSD parade. There it was. The real reason. I wasn't just an inconvenience. I was an unwanted reminder of the wars they liked to pretend didn't exist. A civil lawsuit would take years. Victoria had lawyers, money, influence. But I had something she didn't. I had the military. I remembered what Colonel Elijah Brandt once told me before I redeployed. If you ever get burned back home, call me. I've seen too many of us get eaten alive by red tape. I called him, told him everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, steel in his voice, send coordinates. List of their assets. Quiet or loud? Loud, I said. I want them to feel it. Within 48 hours, Colonel Brandt initiated Operation Groundhold, a full-scale, urban training exercise designated for land under federal investigation. Jesse finalized a thick dossier packed with zoning violations, fraudulent transfers, wetlands misuse, and corruption. Even aerial surveillance showed the HOA had expanded sidewalks and fences into protected government land. They'd built their little utopia on lies. We marked the dog park, the clubhouse, Victoria's elaborate gazebo. All of it built illegally. All of it under scrutiny. At sunrise that Saturday, the town of Silverwood Grove woke to the thunder of diesel engines. Military convoys rumbled into the neighborhood. Humvees parked on manicured lawns. Helicopters hovered overhead. Soldiers in full gear set up tents where Labradors had played fetch. Victoria stumbled out of her house in a silk robe, holding a mug that read, HOA Boss Babe. Her mouth dropped open as she watched soldiers convert the clubhouse into a command center. She stormed across the grass, screaming. An officer handed her a sealed envelope. Federal notice. Temporary occupation of suspect property under Title 10. Her hands trembled. Her face twisted. You can't do this, she shrieked. I can, I said, stepping from an SUV behind her. It's mine again. Every damn inch. Victoria blustered about property rights and procedural authority. But when I asked when she last checked her zoning lines, she froze. That day, soldiers erected barriers around the pool, clubhouse, and gardens. Jesse had brought the receipts, permits never filed, wetlands encroached, funds misused. Victoria tried locking herself inside the clubhouse, but county officials used a spare key. Her luxury bar fridge, now stocked with MREs. Her rose garden turned into a temporary helipad. By noon, local news vans lined the street. Victoria held a press conference in her yard. It was a disaster. When a reporter asked why a veteran's home had been bulldozed, she stuttered something about neighborhood standards. Footage of her rants aired by evening. Online, it went viral. Justice for SGT Cole. Victoria the Vulture. Silverwood Scandal. The Department of Veterans Affairs weighed in, condemning the seizure. Civil rights groups offered pro bono legal aid. Jesse traced 5 more illegal seizures. Victoria's cousin was subpoenaed. A federal audit shut down the HOA's operations pending investigation. Residents started whispering, then apologizing. An elderly couple brought me a box of Mom's china they had saved during the teardown. Another neighbor gave me a photograph of the house, still whole, before the demolition. By sunset, Judge Marion Fields signed an emergency order dissolving the HOA. Victoria Ellis stood outside her now fenced-off property, screaming into a megaphone no one was listening to. As military drones circled overhead, she shouted about her rights. An officer calmly taped a notice to her door. Under federal review, unauthorized occupancy. Her reign was over. In the weeks that followed, volunteers helped clear the debris of my home. The VA offered restoration funds. Contractors and neighbors, many who had once stayed silent, offered their help. A new civic group formed, the Pine Maple Watch, dedicated to protecting veterans from housing discrimination. The foundation of my home was laid again, this time with stronger cement, this time with witnesses. I was there the morning the porch frame went up. I hammered the first nail in myself, right where Mom's swing used to hang. The sound echoed across the yard. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. They stole my home while I fought for theirs. So I returned. I rebuilt. And I made damn sure they'd never forget what it cost to cross a soldier on his own soil.